My bad. I didn't even. I just messed up that entire intro. That's okay. We're running with it. What's up, everybody? It's Greg Birch with Delta Financial, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, I have the honor and pleasure of welcoming with me Miss Kerry-Ann T. Powell, Esquire. Kerry-Ann, how are you?
Greg, how are you? Such a pleasure to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to have you. I appreciate you coming on and be willing to share some of your wisdom and your experience, your knowledge in order for the audience to grow and learn. And so
Yeah.
it's always a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Looking forward to sort of, chit-chatting about how, businesses, small business owners can really thrive in a time where it seems like there's a little uncertainty
Yeah,
and really grow and scale because that's what we're about.
that's what it's all about, right? Let's
Yeah.
grow and scale that business. So
Yeah.
for those of you that don't know Kerry-Ann, Kerry-Ann is a global business strategist, speaker, and champion of small and medium-sized businesses. Her presentation style is a balance of motivation and powerful strategic content that will leave your audience inspired to take action in their business. I'm looking to be inspired today. Kerry-Ann's varied experience of over 20 years as a Washington, D.C. attorney, lobbyist, and fundraiser positions her as an authority of what it takes to strategically succeed while confronting difficult obstacles. After raising $120 million to build the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, she launched her strategic business and consulting firm, Trafalgar. Trafalgar? Is that how
Yeah.
it's pronounced?
Uh-huh.
Man, I'm good. Strategies. She and her team advise business owners from various industries and countries on creating the strategies, systems, and mindsets to thrive in business and in life. Over the years, Kerry-Ann's expertise in speaking have been sought after by international brands, organizations, and institutions such as Working Women's Magazine, Dallas Leadership Foundation, CIEE, Association of Fundraising Professionals, Mogul and Philanthropist, Russell Simons, Rush Philanthropic Arts Foundation, and more. Kerry-Ann is committed to spreading the gospel that running a small and medium-sized business is vital and important to our economies, yet it doesn't have to feel like trying to manage a chaotic tornado. And business owners can run their business smoothly and feel confident that they will thrive. When not speaking or running her business and working with her clients, Kerry-Ann can be found traveling, practicing her Spanish, and enjoying a good meal with good people. Kerry-Ann, that's awesome. Thank
Greg.
you. Thank you. This is going to be great. I'm excited about this podcast.
Yeah, totally. Me too. Me too.
So, are you in the Dallas area?
Actually, no, I
Okay.
am I split my time between Spain and the US. So right now I'm back in the US, but sometimes I'm in Madrid trying to practice my Spanish.
That's crazy. I had a podcast recording yesterday with a gentleman that he is a serial entrepreneur, had 6 businesses that he created, but he was very passionate about Spain, and he goes to Spain like every year, multiple times a year, and
Oh
we
yeah.
talked about it at length.
Oh
He was
yeah.
like, dude, it's beautiful there. You got to go.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You must get there, Greg. Really, I'm telling you, it is the way of life, and the one thing too, like, well, I'm in Madrid in the center of the country, but the sky is just always blue. It is just blue, like this crazy blue that I just like, walk around. I'm like, gosh, look at this color.
That's
But,
awesome.
I do love it.
So he does a leadership retreat where he invites other business leaders to come along with him on a
Yeah.
7-day hike in Madrid.
Oh well, look at this.
And so he was like, "Dude, you want to come?" And I was like, yes."
Yes.
It's in
Yes.
September. I was like, "Yes, I do want to come. That would be awesome."
Oh, that'd be great. When you get there, definitely hit me up because it's just, I'd love to show you my part of Madrid.
Oh, awesome. I would definitely love to do that.
Yeah.
So Kerry-Ann, tell us a little bit about how you help small to medium-sized business owners find that success while not feeling like they're struggling with that with the grind and the all the work that is required.
Yeah, Greg, it can feel like a grind, can it?
Yeah, it can be.
You come into, I think a lot of times, business owners, we start businesses because we have a passion about something or we have a great skill and, we wanted to just launch out to ourselves with our, and make it work for ourselves. And we often don't recognize the pitfalls that can come about. And so what ends up happening, you have all this excitement, and then you get into it and you're doing it great, you're doing it great. And then, all of these things come at you, sort of like, you watch that movie Twister,
Yeah.
you know, there's
Yeah.
like a truck, there's like a cow, and there's all these different
Just everything possible that could go wrong does go wrong.
things go around,
Uh,
cash flow, can't pay my team, can't walk away from the business, can't pay vendors, all these different things that show up in running a business. And, it's not to say that those things aren't real and but I think there's this sort of theory or this, I don't know, ethos out there that somehow that's what running a business should feel like, chaotic.
mm,
And, my philosophy is that's just not true. I believe you can run a business that thrives, that feels smoothly, that doesn't feel like you're trying to dodge things coming out of this, crazy tornado.
yeah.
And so that's what I do with, with my clients when I'm working with them, is first to sort of assess what are the symptoms of chaos that are showing up in their business. I find that there's usually four that pop up, and I call them symptoms of chaos because people think that's the problem, but that's not really the problem. That's a symptom of a deeper problem that we need to address.
Mhm.
So there's about four, big symptoms of chaos that pop up. One is usually a cash flow problem. Obviously, yes, there's going to be ups and downs in a business a little bit, but there shouldn't be these significant fluctuations on a month to month basis as to how the cash is running through the business. And if there's, and also too, how is it that, the actual operational cash coming into the business is that strong as well? Because, you can have, cash through investments and loans and those kind of things. But if it's not the operational cash, then it's a symptom of a chaotic problem.
Mm.
So that's one. Revenue problem, cash flow problem. That's a big one. The second one that I find a lot is, this sort of feeling like people, the owners of these small and medium-sized businesses, cannot walk away from the business without feeling like it's going to implode. Now, I know some of your audience, you have folks that are just starting in the business are like, well, of course I can't walk away from the business. It's me.
Yeah.
And that's fair and that's true. And this is the stage of the business that you are. But if you are building a business where you're building a team and you start having other, like building an agency, then you really do need to be able to feel comfortable to walk away from the business without feeling like it's going to implode.
Mm.
Now, you could walk away from it, but if you're, on vacation with your wife and you're sitting there like checking email or worried or freaking out all the time, then that's a symptom of chaos. Even if you do step away, you don't feel comfortable. So that's one second thing. Third thing would be around the inability to grow or scale. Business is just like anything in nature. If it's not growing, it's dying.
Yeah.
So if you're in the business where it's just, perpetually the same, it's going to eventually die. So there needs to be some process in where you are growing, again, growing and scaling at your own pace. It doesn't have to be like some, big tech company, doing like, 1 year, the next year, that type of thing. But it has to be around what it is. So if you are finding that you've been in the business for a bit and it's not growing, it's not scaling, then that is a symptom of a bigger problem. And then the last one would be for your audience who sort of has a larger agency, if they're having a hard time with team. Maybe the team came in, they were working well for a while, but not so much, or you are really unable to build your team. That is a symptom of a bigger problem. So those are what I call sort of symptoms of chaos. Now, the question on the table is, and I would say this too, Greg, it's important to recognize those four symptoms. Of course, there are others, right? Other problems that people come to me around, but those are the big ones. But those four that I mentioned also happen to be the top four reasons why businesses fail. Not the top four reasons why small businesses fail, the
Mhm.
top four reasons why businesses fail.
Yeah.
So, 80% of businesses fail because of cash flow problems. So it's not like these are things where like, oh, here's a little problem, it's sort of chaotic, but I'm managing it. No, if you continue to have this problem continue through your business, it will fail. It's just not a question of it. So you do have to address it and address it well. No, there's no need. This I'm not about the scare tactic, things. So you're not to be like, oh, fair, But if you see it happening in your business, it's really time to address it now and figure out what the problem is.
Okay.
Now, But Greg, the issue that you have to deal with, because business owners are savvy, yeah,
Yeah.
smart, savvy, risk takers. They wouldn't go into business if they, you know, didn't have a thing. The challenge is, though, oftentimes you might see a problem like, say, cash flow, or say, unable to build or to scale. And you might go to the reason, like the reason that you think it is why it's not happening. So you might say, oh, well, I need more sales, I need more leads, or maybe it's, I need to cut expenses more so I can have a bigger profit margin, whatever the thing is. And that may be it. That may really be it. And, good on you, and start working on that. The thing is, what I have found is that there are actually some other fundamental things that could be causing the problems that are happening in the business, where the business owner spends all this time trying to fix this one thing, but they actually are ignoring the other big things. So there's about 8 of them. So the first thing I would say to think about would be, so I had these things with like sort of 8 fundamental things, right?
Yeah.
The first one would be a very foundational thing, which I call really the components that take up the big idea. And believe it or not, one of the first basic elementary parts of that component is thinking about what is the life plan of the business owner. So oftentimes we don't really, when you think about it, we don't actually, when we start a business, we have an idea. We think we want to branch out on our own because we've great the skill set, or we think we could be able to earn some revenue in this particular business. So we sort of put out a shingle, get our website, call it a day. But we don't often think about, what is my life plan, and does this business actually fit in to my life plan?
Mm.
So, and a lot of times business owners were like, I don't have time to be sitting thinking about what my life plan is when I have fire over here. But the truth is, if you really are having some chaotic things happening in the business, I really take every one of my business owners to tell me what you want in your life. Tell me what it looks like. And then tell me what the business vision looks like. And then, does it fit? And if we find that there's no fit, oftentimes, really, Greg, it's like a 2 millimeter switch you got to do, right? But sometimes it's a bigger problem that you need to sort of fix the way that the business is operating. Or sometimes, every once in a while, you might hear one say, well, clearly this business isn't working for me based on how I want my life to be, which is fine. You're a business owner, you can switch to another business. It's fine. The same entrepreneurial skills work for you, can work for something else. But
Exactly. They're transferable across any industry.
it's transferable. But nonetheless, I think that's the first step. The second step is to sort of assess, what is the business vision? Now, of course, just because you're in the same industry, so if you're in insurance, you might think, well, hello, the business vision is the same as any other sort of insurance agency. And that's not really true.
Not true.
You may decide that your business vision is something else. And it's really important for you to be able to sit down and identify, what is the business vision? What is true north for you and your business? And make sure that you are actually going in that direction. Oftentimes, we have these sorts of, we know how we are in entrepreneurs, like, oh, shiny object over here, shiny object over there. And we start going to all these different sort of ideas to implement into the business. The question always has to be, what's true north? What's the business vision? What are you up to? What is the purpose of it? Once you have that clarified, then any new sort of distractions that pop into place, you're like, no, that's not going to help me get to true north. And when I say business vision, you always need to have sort of the one thing that's kind of
your guiding principle, your North Star, your
North Star. And then, you kind of also want to have something that is guiding you, say, 10, 15 years out. So 10, 15 years out, what do I want it to look like? Yeah.
So to kind of jump on that, I agree 100% with that, because especially in insurance, from life insurance perspective, my experience in being in multiple companies and then now creating my own, one of the first things I did was I created a vision, a mission, and core values. And it's a lot different than any other company I've ever been in, because I don't have that. So, and I was like, this is what I want, Delta Financial to stand by and be viewed as. This is going to be the reputation. And this is also going to be what attracts the right people, because this is This is how we move forward in the industry and how we set ourselves apart.
Exactly. And Greg, I mean, you and I both know, you have those, I try not to spend any time on social media, but ever so often, there's a meme that gets me kind of excited. That's all. But there's this one, sort of funny thing that people are doing on Reels where they are acting out what going out on a date would feel like if you went out with all of the different airlines, right?
Okay, yeah,
So, so an American Airlines, Spirit, whatever. And you can tell when when they're acting, also it's funny, right? So you're seeing these folks doing some funny things on TikTok. But the funny thing is that it's only really, the only reason why it's funny is because we all know what it feels like to travel American or Spirit or whatever the other, Delta. Because we know what the values are of that company.
yeah.
We know what it feels like to interact with employees of that company.
Yeah.
We know what it's like to purchase a ticket from them. So we have a feeling of the company. If you don't have your true values, then you don't really know. People walk away and they don't know what it's like to interact with you as a company.
Yeah.
What is the value? So I think that's really important. So you have, by the way, we're still in level one here. So you have your life vision, you have your business vision, then you start looking at, okay, what are some of the plans that are in place? What is your growth path in the business? What are your so year one, year two, year three, what is it going to look like for you to be able to grow? Is there an exit strategy? I know some of your folks are, just starting into the business, are like, exit strategy, please, I'm getting my entrance strategy. And I get that. But if you're building a business and you don't know what your plan is to exit the business, then it's very difficult to build it the way that you need it to be built. The other day, one of my dear aunts, she's, was a teacher and educator for 25 years. When she retired, she decided to start a nursery school, a daycare center, more like a preschool type of. And of course, because she was an excellent educator, she was someone who built something that really, I mean, there are people who would cut their right arm off to have their child go there. So a lot of these families really stuck with her, like they were building their families, having their youngins, and as they were having children, they all were going to my aunt's preschool.
Mm-hmm.
And so she did that for about 10 years. And so she has all this goodwill in the community, all these raving fans. But when she did it, she started it with no plan for the exit. So now she's ready to, this summer she decided to exit. But because she didn't build it in a way that would allow for her to, there's to exit in a way that she was able to recoup anything out of it. Basically, she just closed shop and that was it. Now you have this, some of the, the furniture, the reputation of the of the business, all of these types of things just died with her. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me. There was one particular client who they have, about 50 employees, really large sort of manufacturing type company based in the Midwest. And the whole company was built with the family. So out of those 50 people, there's probably 30 something are all family.
Mm-hmm.
And so the generation that's above them now is the ones who began the ownership. They're getting ready to retire. But because there was no exit strategy put in place, it is so difficult to figure out how to be able to get out of there. They want to leave it to the younger generation, but there was no plan. So now they're having to kind of hustle a bit, extend their retirement time a bit longer into the business while they create this. So it's really important to have these kinds of things. What's your growth plan? What's your exit strategy? All of these things in the plan. That falls into the third step in the basic level. So your life plan, the vision of the company, what are the plans to support the business? And then the other last two in this basic number step one is one, to take a look at making sure that your product formulation makes sense. Are you actually providing a product to people that you should be providing it to? Are there enough of them that want it? Is there a need? And how are you able to then provide the next need once you sell to that? And how does the product work? Is it making sense? Because you'd be surprised. People will be like, oh, I mean, an insurance might be a little different, but so many folks come to me like, oh yeah, my cash flow isn't going is because I need to have more, I need to, hire a sales team. And then you start looking at their product and like, oh, well, your product, like this is extent of how much you can sell. You have hit your market because the market research, the product market fit was just a little bit wonky when you did the original assessment.
Yeah.
So there are some things that those are some fundamental things you can sort of think about when you're starting to consider, why is there chaos in my business? It could be a number of different reasons. Assessing what it is, that would be your basic fundamentals type of questions.
Mm.
And then, you go into the second level, which is more around leadership. How are you leading yourself?
Mhm.
How are you leading your team? And how are you leading your organization, your business? Once you have the fundamental things, then you need to step into your leadership in a way that makes real good sense for you. And oftentimes, you like, oh, well, I can't walk away because my team is blah, 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 blah. You hear it all the time. I can't leave. Well, are you leading well, though?
Yeah, because
Right?
if you're not building more leaders, then you're not leading well.
You're not leading well.
So,
You're definitely not leading well.
yeah.
And then on the second, there's like that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is when you bring your team in, are you bringing in self-motivated people? Are you bringing people in who are fit for the job that you have hired them to do? Or are you sort of bringing in cousin Susie, who you thought was really good at social media or something, and brought her in without really taking a look and seeing, what do I need for the organization to grow?
Mm.
And then building and then, hiring accordingly, right? So there's these two steps, leadership and your rock star team. Those two steps basically are one coin. Just on one side is the leadership part, meaning you leading yourself, leading your team, leading your organization. And the other side is your rock star team. Are you creating an environment where you're hiring self-motivated people? Self-motivated people. I can't tell you how difficult that is to get people to remember they need to hire self-motivated people. And also, you have a way that you are putting the right person in the seat in the bus, as they say, as Jim Collins always says, in your organization, so that you're making sure that when you walk away a bit, that person is equipped to be able to do what it is that you have asked them to do, hired them to do. So, you're saying if once you have a fundamental thing, and honestly, if you have those fundamental things we talked about,
Mhm.
then you have the step 2 around leadership, making sure that you are leading well. And that's a really difficult thing, Greg. It's easy to say, but people, I always say this, fish can't see water. So you can't see when your leadership is poor.
Mhm.
And you think you're leading quite well because, well, it's worked for you.
Yep.
But if you're stepping into higher and higher places in your life and expanding more, then your leadership might not be showing up well. I always really say, bring in someone who you trust to really be a confidant for you, and have them observe you in the way that you operate in the business, say for a week or two. Just, they're just sort of watching and observing and doing some things. And maybe you have some conversations and you're sharing some stories about how you are. And this is about leading yourself and leading your organization and leading your teams. There's 3 levels. And then have a conversation with them. Honestly, they will, if they love you and they are, the kind of person you trust, they'll tell you. They'll say, yeah, well, what I noticed was this. And what I noticed was this. Another way that you can assess your leadership is to really ask your team in a way that, if you've created a culture in the organization that allows for people to feel comfortable being honest, if you give them the opportunity to tell you, they will tell you, and it not be like bash the boss, but really tell you, well, when you operate like this, it makes us feel this way, so it makes us want to shrink this way.
Mhm.
And so, but you really want to make sure you're leading well. Leadership is the key. And then, of course, hiring well. I think just even those 3 steps, the fundamental things we talked about, leading well, and also having a great team. If you're doing those 3 steps, you're better than most. you're like in a better place than most entrepreneurs.
And I like how this list it's very thorough. Like it's very in depth, especially the first step. And this is literally like it's going to be some work going through this and making sure that you're doing all these steps, but you're setting yourself up for success. Like
For success.
this is going to be, this is the epitome of, if you're chopping a tree, you spend 3 hours sharpening the axe so that you spend 1 hour chopping instead of 4 hours chopping with
Right, you hit it,
you're
right?
sharpening your axe right here in order to
Opening the
prepare yourself
axe.
so you don't have that chaotic time where you're working constantly.
Mhm. Constantly. It's like that. I don't know if you remember, oh my gosh, the guy's name, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah, Stephen Covey.
Stephen Covey, right.
Yeah.
And I heard an interview with Stephen Covey and Tony Robbins a number of years ago. I'm totally aging myself, but he told the story. He's like, yeah, this little, parallel, this guy's chopping a tree with his axe, and someone comes by and it's like, gosh, why don't you stop and sharpen the axe? He's like, I don't know, I've got too much work to do. Can't sharpen the axe, dum dum. And so he keeps like sharpening, seems, she's cutting down the tree with this very dull axe.
Yep.
And it's gonna take the same amount of energy if you just stop, pause, and do the things you need to do. Because in the end, what are you building? I guess the question on the table really always is, Greg, is someone building a business that's going to last, or is building a thing just kind of,
Make some money and have fun.
have some fun? I mean, look, that's fine if you want to do that, but that's not really, to me, that's not honorable. And I really just don't think it fulfills you in the end. But,
Yeah.
To each his own. But if you want to build something that lasts, that you can say, okay, you know what, when I'm dead and gone, there'll be something there to pass on, or there are people who could, purchase it out, or whatever you want it to be. Then you want to put the work in, right? And we always talk about, nowadays all the gurus out there want to make it seem like, running a business is oh so complicated. It's really quite simple. You go, you ask people what they need, right? So everyone needs insurance. You go, you get them the thing, and then you give it to them. It's really
quite simple.
it's
Yeah.
quite simple. It's quite simple. I think where you start seeing things fall apart is when people haven't created foundational things to make things work, and they're not leading themselves well, or their team. But those are the three of the eight. One of the other, like the next level would be, sort of making sure that your objectives, your strategic objectives, are clear. So what are the strategic objectives for the business? Again, this goes back to, what are the strategic objectives for the 10, 15 years out, your 3 years out, your 1 year out, and then the perfect, wonderful spot is the 90 days out. Being clear about what those strategic objectives are, making sure you're really specific about what the KPIs, what does this particular thing, if we achieve this, will this get us to the objective that we're trying to get to? Being clear about what your KPIs are, because I think that's one of the challenges that people have, is like, oh, they want to do this, they want to have this, they want to do. Is doing this going to get you to the objective? And then are you tracking it in a way, and is everyone in your organization tracking it in a way? So being really clear, always like strategic planning is kind of like this highfalutin kind of, only the smart people do it, or only the leadership of the organization does it. If you own a business, just, you and your team should be doing your strategic planning every year, and every quarter there should be real goals that are set to be able to achieve that strategic objective. And you should be looking at it, tracking it on a weekly basis, because in the end, that is really where you will see the execution happening. So if you have good strategic objectives, then on the next part of that would be good systems and processes in place to be able to execute those strategic objectives, making sure that you have a way to track them. And then the other side, really, you're executing it well. So don't be sloppy in the execution, because 90% of businesses who have these strategic objectives that they've created, only 10% don't actually execute them in the way they want them to. And I'm not talking about small businesses. I'm talking about every business. So there's a problem between the creating the strategic objectives and the execution. It's a huge problem there. So you can't be sloppy in the way that you execute. So that's where the problem is. But if you're thinking about what you're doing on a day-to-day, So if you're in first gotten in the business and you're doing that, you still need to have an org chart. You still need to have your strategy, your strategic plan. Go sit in somebody's pool and have your strategic planning day with you and you alone,
Yeah.
and think about what your objectives are, and then really plan it all the way down to the day-to-day things that you do that's going to lead you to that, so that your execution isn't sloppy. And once you've decided this is what it takes for me to be able to get to this objective, then guess what? Every single day, in the highest standard ever, you are executing all the time, all the time, all the time. And if you find yourself doing it where you're slacking off, or your team is slacking off, you go back to those. That's where the operating procedures come in. How do we make a sales call? Literally write that baby out, put that in Trainual, and that's how we make a sales call, right? Or, how do we send a follow-up, quote or whatever? This is how we do it, so that there's no question. You're managing, and when you're in it by yourself, you're doing it on your own, so you can kind of be a little bit like flowy, and I don't really believe in that. But when you start bringing your team on, you don't have the choice. Everyone has to be doing it the same way, or else it gets like, is this how we really do it? Or, I'll just lose that other step. And then that's where the sloppiness comes in.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, so step 3 is having a good strategy. Step 4 is having good operating procedures and systems, right? Step 5 is the making sure that you are executing well.
Yep.
Okay. Then you have, do you have some process in the organization that will allow for you to constantly and perpetually be optimizing what you're doing and also innovating? So that is, with small businesses, we're like the kings of innovation, right? Most innovation happens in small businesses, and those sorts of innovations, they begin to permeate to larger organizations because we're more agile, so we can innovate. But our innovation is innovation coming from, like, we have to fix this because, so you can like move it. So we innovate sort of out of need, I think, a bit more than just being like deliberate around how we innovate. What I would like to recommend that you do is have some sort of process in place. If it's just you right now,
Yeah.
right, then like maybe you're thinking, on Thursdays, Thursday mornings, you spend a couple hours where you're having, you're looking at maybe some chat groups that are not in your industry. See what business owners are doing outside of your industry.
Yeah.
That's where innovation comes from, right? It's a mixture of getting new thoughts and ideas. Maybe you are having conversations with people. Maybe on Thursdays you have coffee with people who are having conversations around innovation in the industry, okay, and seeing what they're doing.
Yeah.
You want to have something in place that provides for you to be thinking about how you can innovate in your business, so that you're always fresh and new and finding ways to please your customers more, to be able to operate better and create a more evolving business. Because sometimes we can get stuck in making sure that the company is running so smoothly, which is the operating, the optimization side of the business, where you're optimizing, making sure your systems are going well. And then you kind of like stuck in optimizing, yeah, this is working, versus innovating on the other side of the coin, where you are bringing in new things, new ideas, even new products. Who knows? I don't know how the insurance industry works, but I'm sure that if you have a business where you're just doing insurance, maybe there are more innovative ways to do things in the insurance field. Or you might decide, well, there's an actual need that I've noticed that isn't actually insurance related, but my customers really value this. How can I fix that need? How can I be innovative in that way to bring another service product or into the business? So I think it's really important to always be having that kind of conversation where it's not just about, oh, I need to innovate because this problem isn't working, but you have an actual weekly thing or monthly thing that you do that causes for innovation to happen. And then, of course, constantly optimizing. So you have those sorts of things happening. And then, of course, in the end, the last one would be around making sure you have a success mindset. Because guess what? All that stuff we talked about, being strategic, making sure you have your growth plan, making sure you have all of that, it is always 80% mindset.
Yeah.
So
I agree 1,000%. And so
it's mindset.
to add a little bit, so the previous step, a good
Mhm.
thing you can do is get a part of mentorship groups. You can get a part
Yes,
of that are encompass multiple industries. That's a great way
yes,
to just learn other people, make really good connections,
yes,
innovate, find other innovative practices that can help you with your business. And sometimes you'll find people within your own industry that are also part of those groups that you can also learn and grow from and see what they're doing. And
yes.
usually, when you get part of those groups, like people, they're of a different mindset when they pay to be part of these groups. So
Oh, yeah.
everyone wants to help everyone.
Oh, yes, yes. That's the thing.
A lot of sharing.
I have to say, Greg, I've been a business owner for quite a bit, and what I have come to find is, yes, I think there are some things out there that can be, free and valuable or whatever. But if you want to elevate in your business, you have to get past this feeling of needing to go to free things and invest the money in putting yourself in spaces that attract a different caliber of people,
Yep.
because it's just there's a the air is different.
Yeah.
The oxygen is different. You want to put yourself in those spaces all the time. So if you think of your budget, going back to sort of cash flow issues, if you begin to sort of think about, what are you putting in your line items and how are you projecting over the next 12 months, if you don't have a good amount of, money allocated right now to going to conferences or going to um, learning opportunities or networking opportunities. And it's not always about because sometimes it's not about going to the local chamber of commerce thing. We're talking about being in spaces where, because those are great too for local stuff and for sales. But we're looking at more like being in spaces where people are thinking bigger. So it might not be labeled, business networking or whatever. It might be labeled something, but it's your responsibility as a business owner to then be thinking about, oh, that's interesting. Get your name on some list, create a different email address. Don't get distracted and have, shiny object thing, but have another email address where you go to see, oh, what are other, what are things that people are going to, what are events, and go there, invest the money, budget for it, and go.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Some of the best money you'll ever spend. And honestly, that when you're first starting as an entrepreneur, every single bit of money should be going into your personal development and growing the business, which is going to grow the business.
Yes,
That is your investment. So don't be like, oh, well, where should I invest this extra money from the business, and try to get investment tips, because honestly, your extra $1,000 isn't going to go very far in the market. It's going to go much farther if you invest that $1,000 into a course for yourself, and you'll be able
yes,
to definitely make a turnaround and get an ROI really quickly as
really
long as
quick.
you do the work.
Yeah. And my thing too, around getting into these spaces, because I think sometimes, again, it depends if someone's coming, where their trajectory took them to being a business owner.
Mm,
But what I have found, I do an actual master class on this around how to really warm up and really strengthen your network. And the thing that I always say when I do this is it's really about being generous. So if you are someone who's listening and you're like, okay, yeah, you're right, I do need to start getting out there and being in these spaces and being in spaces where I am being having personal development. When you are developing relationships, it's really important. If you want relationships that last and that will carry you through, start first with being generous with the person with whom you're interacting with and
yes.
go deeper faster.
Yeah.
So don't do this whole, yeah, here's my business card and here's your business card and let's see if we can, like try to be as authentic as you possibly can when you're interacting with people, and you would be surprised at how much they will respond, because human beings are still human beings, even though now we interact differently because technology is different than, whatever. But the bottom line is that people still want to be connected with humans in a way that makes sense and that works for them. So one tip I would say is when you are building your network and you are getting out there, is be as authentic, as generous as you possibly can. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean it doesn't always have to be about business. I mean, if you have a conversation with someone that you've sat on a table with at some personal development conference, and you find out that person, has a child who really loves orchids, stay in touch with that person, send them a nice book on orchids for children.
Yeah.
Like, be really authentically generous, and you'd be so surprised. And then the other thing around creating that sort of relationship with people where they are thinking a little bit different is to have an actual system, how you are cultivating those relationships. Literally, I have a whole other CRM that I use for how I cultivate my relationships. So I'm making sure that I'm not leaving gaps in how I am connecting with people. So if I know that, literally every 3 months, I'm connecting with this person in some way or somehow. And it's in a real authentic way. So therefore I'm listening more than I'm speaking when I'm talking with them, right?
Yeah.
So you're hearing more about it. But so I think that, but the bottom line is the last layer, which is in the end the biggest layer. Once you have the foundational stuff, then you've got the leadership and the rock star team. Then you've got strategy implementation, operating procedures, execution, and innovation and optimization. Then this level here is really the mindset part. Having a success mindset, which is 80% of how you do anything in life. That is where you want to really start, putting yourself in places which will encourage that, making sure that you are perpetually, and it doesn't have to be about you, watching all those ridiculous, motivational videos on whatever, but it's
No,
really,
it starts with action.
it's action, right? It's
Action.
about
It's discipline, daily action.
it's daily action. It's saying,
Yep.
and you know what I would recommend one would do when they start looking at going back to the foundational thing around the life plan. If you can think about what identity, because Bob Proctor would always say this. He says you can't out earn your self image. You cannot out earn your self image. And look, we all have some childhood something or another that we're all working through. Like, we don't get a chance to grow up without having something that we're working through.
Yeah.
So this is like, so therefore, me too, right? No shame on whatever your issue is.
Yeah.
But if you have a self-image that doesn't line up with who it is you want to be and who you are aiming to be, you need to fix that. So one way you can fix that is by literally writing down who you are. Some people are visual, some people are good readers, some people are more like, image. So whatever works for you. So, I like words and images at the same time. So I literally have something in my phone that is, what it is, the identity of who it is that I want to be. And I look at that thing every single day, sometimes several times a day, to remind my subconscious of who I am, right? I am the owner of this multi-billion-dollar company, and this is how I operate. This is how I am. This is who I am. So it allows for you to not about like, and if you feel like you need to chant it, chant it. If you feel like you need to do, running around the block affirmations, whatever you need to do. But changing your identity is a huge part in you being able to walk into who you are. So it's about you bringing the future into the present. So right now you may not feel like you are the owner of a multi-billion-dollar, insurance agency. You may, because you're sitting in your, your little room in your closet typing away. You may not feel that. But however, decide how you want to feel. Write that out, have image in it, and then every day you're looking at that, and particularly in the hard times when you don't want to make that call, when you're having a problem with leading your team, when you're looking at the bank account and the revenue's looking low, when you are feeling like that, go back to who it is you are. My identity is I am the owner of a multi-billion-dollar insurance agency or whatever your identity is. And you go back to remind yourself of that, because that is when the work happens. You look at that, and then once you feel the feel, you know what when you feel the feel, like the little
Yeah.
tingle, you're like, okay, I'm feeling it. Jump on whatever the action is immediately.
Yeah.
Like whatever the thing is that you're like avoiding, or the thing that you're frustrated about, or the whatever the thing is, you remind yourself of who you are, and then you just jump on it and you do the action. Don't let sit there and be like, yeah, that's true, blah, like kumbaya. No, move in it immediately. And then, so the more that's sort of expanding yourself in a way that stretches you, and you won't shrink back, because once you've expanded and you do the thing, you're like, oh well, shoot, that wasn't too hard,
Yeah.
and you're there now.
Yeah. It's like I always to liken it to like a balloon. Like when you first get a balloon, it's really tiny, but every single time
Mhm.
that you blow it up, it stretches it out. And when it deflates, it's never going back to the original size it was before you
Yeah,
start blowing up. And every single time you do that, it expands even more and more. It's never going back,
it's never
right?
going back. Yeah,
And when it comes to mindset, there's two types of people that I've seen,
yeah,
as an entrepreneur. And you have the one type that will get every single handout, every bit of help, every little bit of assistance, monetary assistance, perfect leads, best training, everyone's helping out, and then they'll still shit the bed. And then you'll have the people that get every obstacle thrown their way, every challenge, people trying to stop them, whatever, and they'll tell them that they can't do it, and then they succeed. And
yeah.
the only difference between those two people is their mindset. The
Mindset,
only difference is their
mindset.
mindset and the belief
Yeah.
that is within themselves.
Yeah.
And
I gotta say, I love a little scrappy, you
yeah,
know. I love a little scrappy, because scrappy gets you, like, because you don't want to start saying, "Well, I'm the underdog, I'm the underdog," but there is something around the scrappy where you're just like, "Well, I'm just gonna prove it right anyway. I'm gonna prove him wrong, I'm
yeah,
just gonna do this even though I don't have it." So wherever you are, if you have lots of, because there are gonna be some people that are at different places of life. If you are someone who had all of the advantages in the world, you decided to go into this business, and maybe your mother and father just support you and gave you all the money you needed to start the business, and you're just doing this. Okay, fine. Then let's do this,
mhm,
right? Let's do this. Figure out who you are. Just because you had all the support doesn't mean that you don't have it within you as well. So
exactly.
let's do it. If you are someone who's coming from, you had to just, you had to scrap it out. You had to have, your sisters borrow some money to give you because your credit's low, and then you had whatever you needed to do to make it work, and you just know that you're not exactly the privileged one. Let's do it anyway. Let's scrap it out, right? Because you have it within you, because we have it within us. Yes, you may have to sort of, again, no one gets a chance. No one gets a chance to live out this world without having something that you're dealing with internally, because we all have our demons. But if you can spend the time identifying them, being self-aware about what it is that keeps you from, one of my mentors used to say, "Where's your stopping point?" Where's your stopping point? Because everyone has a stopping point where they're just kind of like, they do the thing, and then they stop. So identifying where you stop is a really good tool. So once you identify it, so then when you're coming up against a point where you're like, okay, this is where I normally stop, then you do whatever it is you need to do, whether it's go back to the reading what your identity is, or whether it's doing your dance, your chant, your whatever you need to do.
Yeah,
If you need to close the door and scream, whatever you need to do to get past the stopping point, then you've pushed the stopping point further. And then, because again, and then like, well, I thought I fixed it. I thought I'd gone through it, and now I'm still stopping at this point. But you were stopping back there before. Now
yeah,
you're stopping here. Let's put the stopping point further until the next stopping point is, your, $1 billion, whatever.
yep,
But, I think it's really important to recognize that you're not alone. Little issues you have, everyone has them. So let's go ahead and figure out, being self-aware, what it is that you need, who do you need to be around to get you past those stepping points, so you can step into who you are. But any old kind of mindset is going to get you. Well, let's look at it this way. If you have a success mindset, there are a lot of things that people can do even if they have really bad fundamentals,
Mhm.
and they kind of created businesses they didn't know what they were doing. A mindset, because it's 80% of the whole thing, can get you some places. But if you have a good mindset, or a mediocre mindset, but you don't have some of those fundamental things going in the business, then you really are gonna stagnate somewhere.
Yeah.
You might be able to, your mindset might be able to get you to a certain point, and then at some point you're going to lag, and then that's where we start talking about if you're not growing, you're dying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do want to make sure that you're looking at those fundamental things, you're looking at your leadership, you're looking at your team, you're looking at, do you have strategic objectives? Do you have a way to execute them? Do you have operating procedures and systems that are there so that you're managing the system, not the people? Do you have a way to make sure that you're always innovating and optimizing? And is your execution exceptional, not sloppy? All of those things together, your mindset, you're going to be like, there's no stopping you.
Yeah. But this is, I love this list. It's very thorough, but it's a blueprint that young, small, and medium-sized business entrepreneurs can utilize in order to probably assess the health of their organization, the health of themselves as a leader, but also implement in order to start scaling and building effectively to get past those ceilings that they're hitting,
Yeah.
right? And I want to add a little tactic or trick for people, the operating procedure. So a good way, especially this is going to be mostly for solopreneurs.
Hmm.
If you start off, when you start off in business and you as an individual, and you want to eventually build, start documenting everything you're doing and how you're doing it. Start documenting the challenges you're having and how you're overcoming them. Start documenting your sales process. Start documenting how you're developing your product. Start documenting all this stuff. And what's going to happen is you're going to have these almost like a diary, but all this information of your operating procedures. You'll be
Yeah.
able to turn that into your operating procedures very well, because you'd be like, hey, this is how I did it.
Yes.
You documented your journey. So it's like, hey, well, how do you do your sales? It's like, oh, well, here's all my information on how I
Yes,
documented my
here
sales.
I am. Yeah.
There you
And
go. And then you just repurpose it. You change a few things, but it's already documented. It will make your time so much easier. Now, if you are already at the point where you need some operating procedures and you haven't documented, just think back to the things that you did when you started and all the mistakes that you made, all the
Mhm.
challenges you faced, how you overcame them, and how you were able to tweak your methods to get to where you're at now. That will be your operating procedures. You're just going to have to document it now, right? But
Yes.
you want to document all that stuff so that you can hand it off to somebody and they can do their own studies in order to apply. And it needs to be a strategy. And why is a strategy important? Because it applies no matter who applies it, it works.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
across the board.
That Greg, that's absolutely it. And one tool that I always like, I really like that. I mean, you can do this in a Word document. I mean, this can be in
Yep.
Google, but one of the things that you could think about doing is there's a great software. It's called Trainual, as in train, and then UL, as in manual. And you can, use them, because what I love about that is you can have literally like your whole org chart, as what that would be. So the function, even if you're a solopreneur, the function of sales, the function of, fulfillment, the function of customer, whatever, or lead, whatever. And it's a really great organized way. So you can add video, you can do GIFs, you can add all these different things that will allow for you to document how you do what you do in your business.
Yeah.
So if you're new to the game, do it, just start dumping things in there. If you've been this for a bit and you're like, I don't got time to sit here and do this. One thing that I did really years and years ago, I've got a really, really good friend. She's an instructional design person. So she's quite good at this, at asking, potent questions. But literally, have someone in your life call or pay someone to come and sit with you and ask you the questions like, how do you do this? And they're like, well, because if you've been doing it for a while, it's like in your DNA, it's sucked in. So it's difficult to pull it out because it's so
Ingrained in you. You've been doing
ingrained
it
in
so
you.
long.
But if you have someone who you're like, hey, sit with me for, a couple hours and ask me the questions and how I do what it is that I do.
Mhm.
And they're going to ask, because you want to have someone who's very curious and a bit anal retentive, and they're going to ask you these questions, and they're like, and they can just like type the things that it is that you're saying, or you could even record the interview so that you can have it, and then you just sort of, have someone on Fiverr type it up for you, and it's there. and
Yeah.
then you can edit it. So there's a way to do it where you're not spending a ton of time like saying, really, I have no way of pulling it out of my own head. Have someone, I'm always a big fan of like, ask the question, who, as opposed to how.
Yeah.
Who can help me with this, right? Who can help me with this? This goes back to your networking, and this goes back to your relationship development. This goes back to being in spaces where you're with people who are breathing a different oxygen than than others. So that is really one way. But the strategic creating your operating procedures are a must. Once you do it, you're going to hate doing it. Well, some of you have personality. There are personalities who love that kind of stuff. So I found a couple clients who are like, yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
And there are others who are like, I got time for this. Most entrepreneurs hate it, but you'll love it once you're complete, because then there you go. That's what you do.
Absolutely. Kerry-Ann, thank you so
Yes.
much for jumping on and sharing those 8 strategies for entrepreneurs. This is awesome. I really appreciate it. And I know that the audience is going to get a lot too. For anyone that wants to learn more about you or learn more about your coaching or just kind of reach
Mhm.
out and connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah. So I actually have a everything I just said, I actually have it in a PDF. And so what you can do is just download it
Mhm.
and take a look. And in that document, also my contact information if you want to shoot me an email, or if you want to just be friends on, Instagram, um, or LinkedIn. So it's nochaos.com, www.nobusinesschaos.com, nobusinesschaos.com, because I believe chaos in business is the enemy. So you can go there, you can download the PDF. It's basically all the things that we talked about here. And it also gives you additional ways to fix it, more tangible things to fix problems that you might be coming up if they're coming up in any of the other 8 components.
Yeah.
And from there, I have my information and you find ways to connect. But if you do connect with me on any of the platforms, LinkedIn, social media, let me know, like, hey, I was on, Greg's podcast. I'd love to, be able to connect with you and say hi, because again, in the end, small businesses, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
2/3 of people in the US are hired by small business. 99% of businesses are small. So this is where it's at.
This is where it's at. I 100%. I believe that's what's going to change the economy is having more successful small business entrepreneurs.
100%.
So, thank you so much for jumping on, Kerry-Ann. Last question I ask all my guests.
Yes.
You have the opportunity to break bread with, learn from, just talk and have a great conversation with 3 individuals, anyone in history,
Oh, Lordy.
living or deceased. Who would those 3 people be and why?
Okay. So Nelson Mandela. I
Greatest
really,
leader. Greatest. That's a good one. And no one's picked him yet, but he's got some great leadership principles.
oh my goodness, Nelson Mandela. Um, I think from a business perspective, I'm going to choose Martha Stewart.
Okay.
She just recently, I don't know if you just realized it. She just recently, I mean, this woman never dies. She just recently built a deal with Amazon where all her stuff for now are going to be on Amazon. It's like a whole store of Martha stuff. This is a woman who changed women's work into like $1 billion industry, right?
Yeah.
So Martha Stewart. And, I think the third person, I think right now, I one of the people that I regret having never, I was in the room with her, but never got a chance to actually shake hands, would have been Madeline Albright.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah. I like that.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great list. I like that. Those are all very unique. I haven't heard any of those. So
Okay.
you passed the test.
I passed the test.
So thank you so much for coming on board and sharing everything with the audience. If you listen to now, obviously you got some value. And if this helped to change your perspective, teach you something, make you grow, then do me a favor. Share this content with somebody else that can also get value from it. We grow by word of mouth. We grow by you sharing this content. It only takes you 30 seconds, 60 seconds max in order to rate, review, subscribe, and share this content. But it means the world to both Kerry-Ann and I in order to share this content. So this has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time.